The wind tore through the trees like a warning howl, pushing snow in wild spirals across the forest floor. Maya pulled her coat tighter, the zipper catching just beneath her chin. Snowflakes stung her face like tiny needles, but she kept moving, her boots crunching over the frozen crust of ice. Every breath was sharp, every step uncertain. She didn't look back. There was nothing behind her worth seeing. Out here, in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness, silence wasn't quiet, it was heavy. It pressed into her chest and echoed through the emptiness she carried. The snowstorm should have turned her back hours ago, but it didn't. Not yet. Her fingers ached around the cold metal of her camera. It was why she'd come, she told herself that, at least. Document the winter behavior of wildlife near Whisper Edge. Get the shots. Go home. But she didn't know where home really was anymore. The forest path narrowed, but she knew this trail. Every broken branch, every rise and dip had once been walked, with someone beside her. That was before the avalanche, before the radio went silent, before she got the call and stopped answering the door. Maya's camera swung against her hip, the lens cap clicking with each step. It was more a habit than a mission. Now snap a shot, feel less empty. Except lately, even the shutter felt like a lie. She hadn't captured anything worth remembering in months. Still, she walked. The cold didn't bother her anymore. Neither did the stillness. Out here, grief didn't echo as loud. It just curled quietly around her ribs, waiting for her to stop, pretending it wasn't there. Whisper Edge appeared ahead, framed by snow-draped evergreens. The cliff jutted out like a wound in the earth, its drop hidden beneath the blizzard's breath. Maya paused, heart thudding. She hadn't stood here since that summer with Caleb, her brother before everything broke. He'd called it the edge of the world, laughing as he leaned into the wind with arms wide open. Now there was no laughter, just the moan of the storm. She wiped her lens with trembling fingers. If she could capture something today, maybe she could reclaim a piece of what she'd lost. Maybe, maybe not. A gust struck from the side, nearly knocking her sideways. She braced herself on a tree trunk, her gloved hand gripping bark so tight. Her knuckles popped and then soft, so soft she almost missed it. Her name, Maya. It wasn't real. Of course it wasn't. But for a second, the voice sounded like Caleb's, familiar, warm, alive. She closed her eyes, letting the wind wash over her face. Maybe it was memory. Maybe it was madness. Or maybe the cold was finally winning. Whatever it was, it pulled at something deep in her chest, something she had buried far too long. Pushing forward, the trees thinned. The cliff edge loomed near. Snow piled high on either side, but she trudged through, her legs heavy and burning. Her breaths turned shallow, fogging the air in bursts. She wasn't sure if it was the altitude or the ache in her ribs, or maybe the fear she refused to admit was still there. She shouldn't be this far out, not in this weather, not alone. But going back meant facing a cabin full of silence and walls full of echoes. And so she kept walking, until the world gave her a reason not to. It came suddenly ripping through the white noise of the wind. A bark, high, sharp, panicked. Maya stopped, heart hammering. Not a wolf, not a coyote. This was something else. It carried desperation, not hunger. Another bark followed, closer, urgent. She turned slowly, scanning the trees. Snow blurred the landscape, but the sound had direction. It was coming from near the cliff, too close to the edge. She hesitated, instinct warring with fear. Then the bark came, again more desperate this time. A plea. Something was out there, alive, and in trouble. Maya's feet locked in place, not from the cold, but from the sudden weight. In her chest, the sound cut through the emptiness. It wasn't just noise, it was a call, a spark, a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Her hand gripped the camera, fingers twitching. She hadn't cared in months, not about people, not about animals, not even about the work. But now, for reasons she couldn't name, her pulse quickened. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She stepped toward the sound, toward the unknown, toward something still fighting to be heard. Maya followed the sound, her heart thudding louder, then the crunch of snow beneath her boots. The storm clawed at her coat, but she barely felt it now. As the wind cleared for a brief second, her eyes landed on the scene ahead just steps from the cliff's edge. A large German shepherd stood rigid, fur bristling, muscles coiled. Its body blocked the narrow space between the rock wall and the drop behind it. Across from it, mere feet away, loomed a grizzly snorting, pacing, teeth bared. Maya gasped, ducking instinctively behind a frozen spruce. Her pulse spiked. The bear's claws scraped the snow as it tested the standoff. But the dog held firm, unmoving, its bark low, now almost a growl. She didn't move. Couldn't. What was a dog doing out here alone? And why wasn't it running? Then she saw it. A tiny flicker of movement behind the shepherd. A small shaped gingerbread fur, trembling limbs. A fox cub, injured, huddled. This wasn't just a dog, caught in danger. This was a protector making a stand. The dog shifted its weight, stepping wider in front of the cub as the bear inched forward. It growled louder, snapping its teeth without. Lunging, it was outmatched, outweighed. But it didn't matter. Its attention flickered to the side, noticing Maya's silhouette. Yet it didn't bark, didn't retreat. It simply acknowledged her, then returned its gaze to the threat in front of it. The cub whimpered softly, pressing its tiny body against the dog's hind legs, seeking safety where none existed. Its leg was bent unnaturally, one eye nearly swollen. Shut, Maya crouched, her instincts torn. She should back away. Let nature run its course. But this didn't feel like nature. It felt like a plea, like someone was asking her to do something. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked her for anything, especially not like this. The dog stood like a soldier holding a crumbling wall. It didn't care about survival. It cared about the cub, and in that moment, Maya's numb heart cracked a little more. Her hands moved without thought, raising the camera. The lens focused, capturing the dog's face alert, defiant, with eyes that burned despite the cold. But as her finger hovered above the shutter, she hesitated. This wasn't a moment to be taken. It was a moment to be answered. The camera slipped from her fingers, landing softly in the snow. She stood, slowly, carefully. Her breath formed clouds in the freezing air. The bear took a step forward. The dog didn't flinch. Neither did Maya. "Hey!" Her voice cracked through the storm. She raised her arms, waving them wide, stepping forward with more courage than she knew she had. "Get out of here." The bear paused, head turning. "Go," she screamed again, louder this time. Her voice echoed against the rocks. The dog growled sharply, as if adding its own warning. For a long moment, nothing moved, just wind, just breathe. Then, with a snort, the bear huffed and turned. It lumbered back into the trees, snow crunching beneath its weight, until it vanished into the white wall of the storm. Maya dropped to her knees, hands shaking. The dog never looked away from her. The world stilled. No growling, no howling wind, just quiet. Maya breathed slowly, watching the dog. It hadn't moved, not even to comfort the cub. It stared at her chest, rising and falling, blood on its paws staining the snow beneath it. She didn't know what to say. "Hey, buddy," she whispered. Still, it held its ground, not with fear, with purpose. She realized then it was waiting to see what she would do. It had protected the cub. Now it was guarding the space between them. Maya lowered herself, resting on one knee. The snow soaked through her pants, but she didn't care. The dog's ears twitched, but didn't flatten. Its body stayed rigid, but its gaze, those eyes, so tired, so hollow, yet alive with something deeper than fear. She'd seen eyes like that, in the mirror, eyes that had lost and fought to keep going anyway. "I'm not here to hurt you," she murmured. "I swear." The dog didn't move, but it didn't growl either. That was enough. She noticed the red streaks against the white. His front paws were bleeding, cracked and raw. Beneath the matted fur on his neck, an old collar clung loosely, the tag long gone. She reached forward, slow, deliberate. The dog tensed, but didn't snap. Her fingers brushed the collar gently. No name, just worn leather, nearly torn in half. "You've been through hell, haven't you?" The dog blinked once. A long, slow blink that felt like the closest thing to trust she'd seen in months. There were no owners in sight. No tracks but hers and his. The fox cub lay curled up now, eyes fluttering, its breathing shallow but steady, dots just them. 3 souls, each wounded, each alone, and yet, in that small pocket of forest beneath the roaring storm, something fragile. An unspoken settled between them. Maya reached for her dropped camera, but didn't raise it. Some moments weren't meant to be captured. Some were meant to be kept. Maya opened the cabin door and stepped aside. Shadow didn't hesitate, but he didn't relax either. His paws, raw and bleeding, left faint streaks on the wooden floor as he walked in with the injured fox cub cradled between his teeth. He placed it gently on the rug near the hearth, then turned, planting himself between the cub and Maya. The room filled with warmth from the fireplace, the scent of pine wood lingering in the air. But the heat did little to melt the layer of tension that still blanketed them both. Maya stayed near the doorway. "You're safe here," she said softly. Shadow's ears twitched, but his eyes never left her. She changed into dry clothes, made hot tea, and filled a bowl with water for him. She left food chicken from her rations beside it. Then she sat across the room, letting silence speak louder than intrusion. He didn't eat. He didn't lie down. He simply stood guard. Over the next few days, a quiet rhythm took root. Maya rose early to boil water, check on the cub, and lay out food. Shadow would move just enough to eat only when she wasn't looking. He let her approach the cub, but only so far. If she crossed an invisible line, he growled low, not threatening, but clear. Still, Maya persisted. She never reached out to fast, never made sudden movements. She talked softly, even when she doubted it mattered. "You don't have to like me," she told him one morning. "I just need you to know I'm not going anywhere." Sometimes she'd catch him watching her, not in fear, but in a sort of cautious curiosity. He was a soldier, worn and on edge, and she was a ghost, still trying to find her shape again. Nights were hardest. Maya would sit by the fire and speak aloud, half to Shadow, half to the emptiness in her chest. Caleb used to talk to dogs like they were people. Said they always understood more than we gave them credit for. Shadow wouldn't react, but he never walked away either. I hated the forest after he died. Couldn't breathe near a tree without thinking of the avalanche. She chuckled bitterly, and now I'm hiding in it. Shadow would lift his head sometimes, his eyes catching the firelight. Still silent, still still, yet Maya kept talking, not for answers, but because it was the only time the silence didn't hurt. One morning, Maya crouched near the hearth, holding a strip of jerky in her palm. I won't push, just this once. Shadow didn't move. She waited. Minutes passed. Finally, he rose. Cautious, each step is calculated. He stopped inches from her, eyes locked with hers. Then slowly, carefully, he took the food. Their fingers brushed fur and breath. Maya didn't move, didn't speak. Her chest felt like it might break open. He stepped back, chewing, then returned to the cub. But something had changed. A line had been crossed, not with force, but with faith. That afternoon, as Shadow slept near the fire, Maya sat closer than usual. She studied him, the way his body twitched in restless sleep, the scars along his flank, the cracked, faded leather of his collar. She leaned in, whispering, "Who were you before all this?" He stirred, eyes fluttering open. He didn't growl, just looked at her, deep and quiet and tired, and she saw it, the ache, the years of waiting, the question no one had answered. She touched the collar again. "You lost someone too, didn't you?" Shadow blinked slowly, and somehow that felt like yes. Later that week, Maya hiked to the ranger station to upload her trail cam footage. While the files transferred, she wandered to a back corner where old case files were stacked. Lost hikers, burn notices, animal sightings. She flipped through one. Then I froze. A missing dog poster, German Shepherd, male, trained search and rescue, responds to ranger. Last seen 2 years ago near Snowbird Ridge. The photo was aged, but the eyes were unmistakable. Her breath caught. She grabbed the file, racing back to the cabin. That night, she knelt beside Shadow. "Was that your name?" she asked. "Ranger?" He didn't react. Then again, maybe he did. The tiniest tilt off his head. "You were like him," she whispered. "Like Caleb's partner." Her throat tightened. "You were a rescuer." Shadow laid his head on his paws, and for the first time, Maya saw a glimpse of peace in his posture, like hearing that word, rescue, had brought something back to life that night. Grief caught up with her. She sat at the edge of her bed, clutching her brother's old field journal. Pages worn, corners curled. Tears came quietly. Not a storm, just a steady, hopeless rain. "I miss him every day," she whispered. A soft shuffle. She looked up. Shadow had crossed the room. He didn't bark, didn't whine. He just laid his head on her lap, pressing into her trembling hands. She bent over him, sobbing harder now, not because it hurt more, but because someone finally stayed. She whispered, "Thank you," and in the warmth of that moment, silence finally felt like healing. Days passed. The cub began to eat more, its limp fading slowly. Maya fed it with care, wrapped it in old scarves, and even gave it a name, Whisker. Shadow watched over them both like a sentinel. No longer distant, but quietly involved. Maya noticed the way he waited for her voice now, how he followed her to the porch and lay at her feet, ears alert. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were sinking one breath, one step, one shared recovery at a time, 3 broken pieces fitting into something whole. Not a family, not yet, but something close. One evening, Maya checked the trail cams. Her smile faded. Snare traps, blood smears, empty bait cans, human boot prints, poachers. She called the local rangers, but they were short-staffed. "We'll try to send someone by next week," they said. Too late. Maya installed more cameras, mapped escape paths, kept her rifle loaded not to kill, but to warn. She showed Shadow the footage. He growled low, then walked to the door and sat. Waiting, watching, ready. They weren't just healing anymore. They were preparing. It came 2 nights. Later, Maya stepped outside with a flashlight. The woods were quiet, but too quiet. No rustling, no birds, no wind. Shadow stood on the porch, ears up, tail stiff. Then came the growl, low, steady, focused, from the trees. Maya froze. Following his gaze, nothing moved, but something was there. Watching, the growl deepened. She stepped back inside, locking the door. Shadow didn't follow. He stayed, guarding, defending, ready to protect the bond he hadn't asked for but had found anyway. The moon carved pale lines through the black sky as Maya followed Shadow into the trees. Her breath came in short bursts, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper, something electric in her chest. Shadow moved with purpose, ears sharp, steps silent. The fox cub padded behind, small and quiet, but unwilling to stay behind. They weren't wandering. Shadow knew where he was going. Every crackle of underbrush sent a jolt through Maya's spine. Every whisper of wind felt like a warning. She gripped the flashlight tighter, her fingers cold with sweat despite her gloves. "What are we walking into?" she whispered. Shadow didn't answer. He didn't need to. He stopped suddenly, body low, head forward. Maya crept to his side and peered ahead. That's when she saw them, cages, dozens, dottons, and the smell rot. Urine, blood, a hidden camp of cruelty, cloaked in the dark. Maya's stomach twisted. Rusty cages lined the clearing, half covered by tarps. Inside one, she saw antlers. Another held feathers and bones. Most were empty now, but not clean. Blood streaked the floor. Fresh bait buckets lay scattered near snares, some still baited with raw meat. Shadow growled low. Maya scanned the area. No movement, no voices. Whoever had set this up wasn't here. Not yet. Still, her hands shook as she took out her camera. She needed proof, for the rangers, for the authorities, for whatever came next. She clicked a few photos, her breaths fogging the lens. Then she took a cautious step closer to examine one of the traps. Snap, pain. Like fire exploded through her calf. Maya screamed raw and sudden, falling hard onto the snow-covered earth. Her flashlight spun out of reach. The steel trap clamped tight around her leg, its jagged teeth digging through her pants and into flesh. Blood soaked through fabric in seconds. Shadow. She gasped, biting her lip to keep from blacking out. The cold bit into her skin, but it was nothing compared to the pain crawling up her leg. The cub whimpered nearby. Shadow spun back, eyes wide, tail stiff. He was beside her in seconds, sniffing, circling the trap with urgency. Maya's vision blurred as tears spilled over. "Help me." Shadow barked sharp and fierce and lunged at the trap. He bit the hinge, pawed at the mechanism, growling and grunting with effort. Metal clanged against metal as he pulled. Maya clutched the snow, her knuckles white. She felt the cold pressing into her bones. "Please," she whispered. The trap didn't budge. Shadow barked again, louder this time, as if trying to summon help from the trees themselves. And help came, but not the kind they wanted. From the tree line, a figure emerged, rifle slung low. His flashlight flicked on, scanning the ground. He saw her. Who the hell, he started. Shadow turned, teeth bared, before the man could finish his sentence. The dog was airborne. Shadow hit him full force, knocking the rifle sideways. The man fell with a shout, tumbling into the snow. Snarls and curses filled the clearing. Maya tried to reach for her leg, gritting her teeth against the pain. Her fingers were slick with blood. Shadow didn't hesitate, didn't falter. He fought like a memory reborn. The man scrambled, reaching for his weapon. Shadow clamped down on his arm, dragging him sideways. The rifle discharged into the sky with a deafening crack. "Get off me, mutt," the poacher screamed, slamming a fist into Shadow's side. But the shepherd didn't let go. His training had returned, fierce, focused. Flawless. Maya watched through a haze of pain, shouting, "Shadow, watch out." Another movement from the trees. A second poacher, gun raised. Shadow snarled and lunged before Maya could warn him. The second man fired once. Shadow yelped, spinning back, his side grazed by the bullet. Blood bloomed against his fur. "No." Maya cried, but even bleeding, even limping, Shadow didn't stop. He charged the second man, biting hard into his leg. The man shrieked, falling back into the snow. The fox cub darted away in panic, disappearing into the brush. Maya's scream turned to sobs. "Please, Shadow, come back to me, don't die out here." Shadow turned, panting, blood dripping from his side, and he came back to her, from the edge of the clearing. A blur of motion red, fast, alive. The fox cub darted between the men, weaving. Through chaos, it didn't make sense, but it mattered. In the middle of blood and brutality, there was innocence still moving, still free, still fighting to live, and for Maya, that was enough to remember what she had left to protect. Maya reached into her pack with trembling fingers. Her camera, still there, she grabbed it, aimed at the poachers now crawling to regroup. Click, click, flash, they shouted. Blinded, then her hand found the flare gun Caleb's, the one she'd never had the heart to throw. Away she fired. Red light exploded into the sky. Shadow sprang again. Teeth bared, fury reignited. It was over in seconds. The poachers ran, and Maya, half-conscious, lay back against the snow, watching her dog, her rescuer, stand tall above her, chest rising with each breath. The sirens arrived minutes later. The rangers found Maya barely conscious, her leg bleeding. The snow around her stained red. They saw the dog too guarding her, like a statue of war and grace. "Stay still," one ranger said, easing toward her. Maya only had eyes for Shadow. He limped to her side, lowered his head, and rested it on her hand. She cried then, not from pain, but from the relief of knowing she wasn't alone. Not anymore. The hand on his fur was shaking, but steady enough to hold on. "You stayed," she whispered. Shadow blinked, then closed his eyes, and together they waited for the dawn. The clinic room smelled of antiseptic and pine. Maya lay beneath crisp white sheets, her legs stitched and elevated. The bandages ached, but it wasn't the pain that made her blink back tears, was the silence. A peaceful one this time, earned outside. Her door, she heard murmurs, News vans, reporters, rangers. Brave dog saves woman from armed poachers in remote Alaskan forest. One headline read, "Another called him a hero. Unidentified shepherd fends off to poachers, survives gunshot. Wound." But to Maya, he was more than that. He was Shadow, or maybe Ranger, or maybe both. He lay curled on a blanket near her bed, his wound tended, his eyes tired but content. "He never left your side," a nurse told her. Maya reached down, fingers trembling slightly as she brushed the fur along his shoulder. Shadow shifted closer, resting his chin on her arm. "You stayed," she whispered, and he did. The vet scanned him days later, a small beep, a number, a name, Shadow's records traced. Back to a family lost in a car crash 2 winters ago. The address led to nowhere, Nauja's grief and an old search report. He'd once been called a ranger, a certified search and rescue dog. Maya stood in the vet's office, hand over her heart as they read the file aloud. Trained out of Cascade, K-29 Division, retired for therapy, transition. Went missing the week after the crash. A moment of silence passed between the room's occupants. Shadow stood beside Maya, not understanding the words, but feeling their weight. She crouched down and placed both hands on his face. "You found your way back," she whispered, "and this time you're staying." He licked her wrist once, gently, and she knew they had both been lost for too long. Now they were found. The adoption paperwork was simple, too simple. Maya thought, for something so enormous. She signed her name slowly, deliberately, like each letter mattered. Shadow sat by her feet as the ranger handed her the final form. "It's official," he said with a smile. "He's yours." But Maya didn't nod. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against Shadow's. "You've been mine since the cliff," she murmured, her eyes welled. But this time, they didn't sting, they softened. The kind of tears you cry when something broken starts to heal. Shadow closed his eyes and sighed. Not out of fatigue, out of peace. When they returned to the cabin, the forest was quiet. Snow blanketed the trees like a secret that only the mountains could keep. But something had changed. Maya walked slower this time, not because of the healing leg, but because she wanted to feel it all, every breath, every crunch of frost, every whisper of pine. Shadow trotted ahead, tail held a little higher. The rangers had installed new locks, added cameras, and reinforced the back wall. But the safety Maya felt wasn't in the hardware. It was in the presence walking beside her. She stepped onto the porch and opened the door. The warmth inside welcomed them, not just from the fire, but from the spirit that now lived there. This was no longer a place to hide. It was a place to begin again. It started with a rustle. Shadow perked up, ears turning toward the tree line. Then, out of the brush came a flash of red, cautious, graceful, alive. Dot Whisker, the fox cub, healed now, circled the clearing slowly before trotting toward them. He stopped a few yards away and sniffed the air. Maya stood on the porch, watching. Shadow walked forward, calm and certain, and sat beside the fox like an old friend waiting to share silence. Whisker didn't flinch. He stayed. Eventually, he began to visit every few days, sometimes with a mouse in his jaws, sometimes with nothing but his eyes. They didn't need to speak. They were all survivors. Weeks later, Maya held her camera, again not out of obligation, but from something deeper. She framed the snow-covered horizon, the curve of Shadow's body lying relaxed near the trees. The soft flicker of fox ears behind him, click dot. Then again, click dot. This time, the shutter didn't feel like an echo of grief. It felt like purpose. She hiked shorter trails now, but with more awareness, with more intention. Her new series wasn't about capturing wildlife. It was about capturing what she almost lost. Hope, loyalty, the moment two broken souls found one another and didn't let go. Click, Shadow turned, catching her eye. His tail thumped, once in the snow, and for the first time in a long time, Maya smiled through the lens. Her photo series launched 2 months later. It was titled, The Ones Who Stay. Images of Shadow watching over Whisper Edge, Whisker curled beside a bowl on the porch, of Maya's own boots beside paw prints in the snow. But more than images, it was a story, one of loss, of rescue, of how sometimes it's not the strongest who survive, but the ones who refuse to leave. The final piece in the gallery was her favorite shadow, standing at the same cliff where they met, tall, scarred, unshaken. People stopped in front of it. Some wept. Maya watched from the back of the gallery, one hand over her heart. Shadow stood beside her, a service vest now strapped gently across his chestnut as armor. But as honor, we stay, she whispered to him. And as if he understood every word, Shadow pressed into her side. Maya stood once again at the edge of Whisper Cliff, where it all began. The wind whispered over the ledge, but this time it didn't carry the sting of loss. It carried something quieter, stronger, a sense of arrival. Shadow stood beside her, tall and steady, his fur rippling in the breeze. No longer cornered, no longer waiting to be saved. Maya crouched down and pressed her palm to the earth, remembering the desperation that had once clung to her bones. You brought me back here, she said softly, but not to break. She looked at him. You brought me here to begin again. And for the first time, she believed it. Grief hadn't left her, but it had changed, Maya realized. Healing didn't mean closing the door on what was lost. It meant learning to walk with the memory without crumbling beneath it. Each step she took with Shadow beside her, each photo she framed with intention, helped transform pain into presence. Her brother's laughter still echoed in the wind sometimes. It no longer haunted her. Now it guided her. And when she looked into Shadow's eye, steady, scarred, enduring, she saw not only survival, but something more powerful. She saw a life that had once been forgotten, choosing to love again anyway. Shadow had once wandered, alone, unclaimed, unnamed, nearly unseen. But the same dog who had once been forgotten had become the one who stood in front of danger, who bled to protect, who chose, without words, to stay. Maya understood now heroes weren't perfect. They were just the ones who refused to give up. And in that understanding, she saw herself not as a woman broken by loss, but as someone being rebuilt by love. She wasn't rescued by Shadow. They had rescued each other. Their story didn't end with survival. It began with purpose. Maya and Shadow together became more than comfort for each other. They became quiet, proof of what loyalty could build. In a world full of noise and vanishing things, they stayed. They protected the wild. They told stories. They listened when no one else did. And slowly, that bond became a beacon, a reminder that healing isn't loud. It doesn't shout. Sometimes it simply sits beside you in the dark and refuses to leave. The photo was simple. Shadow stood at the edge of Whisper Cliff, proud, worn, alive. Behind him, the sky broke open with morning light. It wasn't staged. It wasn't planned. But when Maya developed it, her breath caught. That single frame held everything: courage, loss, love, return. She titled it The One Who Stayed. And when people asked why it mattered so much, she always gave the same answer: because I'm still here too.